What is up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Breathe in Air podcast, where everyday action meets extraordinary mindset. Today, I'm very excited for our guest. She is a lifestyle coach, a podcast host of the Lindsey Elmore Show. She's an author of many things, but one of her books is called Essentials, which focuses on essential oils. And you all know that I love all of these types of things, and I'm sure we'll talk on them. Also, she has an ebook or a cookbook called Clean Slate, among many others. Dr. Lindsey Elmore, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, we were going early on when we were doing this intro, we got to hit record because we got so much good stuff, and it's a crazy thing what podcasting does as far as bringing people together that have a common thought process. And I always preach on how important it is to surround yourself with these kind of people and draw that energy towards you. And just for the listeners who don't know much about you, Lindsey, go ahead and give a little synopsis of you and what you do.
Absolutely. My name is Dr. Lindsey Elmore. I am a chemist. I'm a pharmacist turned natural wellness speaker and enthusiast. I also am a yoga instructor. I know a lot about emotional release. I love elimination diets and getting really down to clean eating to help you heal your body. And I am currently going through my functional medicine training. I am originally from Birmingham, Alabama, trained and lived all over the place. And at this point, speaking about essential oils and supplements, I have been blessed to traverse this globe. I have spoken on 5 continents in more than 40 countries about how can we really and truly live healthy lives, and how can I, as a purveyor of that message, help people to actually believe it. That's been one of the things that's been very stressful for me this year is I recognize that some people don't believe that they deserve to be healthy. And some people don't believe that it's like a basic human right to live a healthy life. And I just stand so opposed to that. And I'm not naive. I don't deny that there are problems, systematic problems that keep certain people from being able to access good food and to have good health care and to have good exercise and all the things. But I think that when we can learn to control our inner environment and go with the challenges that the world gives us, we end up being in a much better place. And so I'm super grateful to be here to talk to you tonight, because I hope that some of your listeners walk away with a renewed belief that everyone, regardless of what diseases are on your medical chart and regardless of what socioeconomic background you came from or the color of your skin or the religion that you practice or any of it, you deserve and have the ability to access peace with inside of you, even as the world kind of goes cray around us. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about me to get us started.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much good stuff to unpack there, but it is a crazy time. There is a lot of stress, and there are a lot of health issues, whether mentally, physically, with this pandemic that we're all going through. I heard you speak and touch on a little bit as far as the pharmaceutical side of things, and I find this to be a very interesting topic that I'm pretty passionate about, as far as not looking straight towards pharmaceuticals for the cure of specific things that are prevalent today, as far as the big 3 I like to say: ADHD, anxiety, and depression. Things that I feel like all of us can relate to and a lot of us deal with. And especially when you are in a circumstance or a situation where you may feel out of control, like it has been this crazy whirlwind of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your take on that topic, as far as pharmaceuticals and where they play their role as opposed to alternative health, and some of these ways that we can, basically widen our horizons on health in general and what it means to be healthy?
Well, one of the things that I think we have to do is reframe the conversation, because when you say alternative health, it implies that I don't believe that conventional pharmaceuticals have a place, which could not be further from the truth. But when we think about, is it integrative health? Is it holistic health? What is it? What I encourage our listeners to do today is look at along a pathway, a spectrum of I am totally well, I am living my optimum health. And you mentioned the big three, the ADHD, depression, and anxiety. I would think, look, let's talk about the big two that cause basically, you know what? I can get a three. I've been sitting here in my head, like, how do I get to three? There are three major things that I maintain are really what is wrong with all of us. Number one is cardiometabolic disease.
Mhm.
It's astonishing to think that only 12% of people within the United States are cardiometabolically fit, because we often think about, and you go to the doctor and they say, you have high cholesterol. Um, you really need a statin medication, or else you're going to end up having a heart attack. Then no one takes a step back to look at, like, well, what does your insulin level look like? What does your entire thyroid panel look like? What do your sex steroids look like? Because if you have cardiometabolic disease, which typically starts from inflammation, which I would say is another piece of the equation, gut inflammation and gut problems have everything to do with mental health disorders, cardiometabolic disease, irritable bowel syndrome, gastrointestinal reflux, all of the gastrointestinal diseases. They start in the gut, and it starts from eating inflammatory foods that cause us to be off balance. So when we think about cardiometabolic disease and then we think about gut health, and then you can think about, well, mental health disorders. I like to think about health on a continuum from all the way well to very, very sick at the end of the line. There is no doubt that if you are at the very end of the line and you have a rip roaring infection, take the antibiotics and repopulate with probiotics later on. If you break your leg, have the surgery, get the pins, all the things. But there's this huge spectrum of gray area that most people tend to live in, where there's an underlying inflammation that, because of the largest nerve in your body, the vagus nerve, which communicates information directly from your gut to your brain, those low grade inflammatory responses trigger your brain. I should be anxious. Oh, I just got a big dose of sugar. I can't focus anymore. Well, now you've got ADHD and you need to be on amphetamines, which are extraordinarily addictive and lead people down bad pathways where they end up addicted to more uh they're illicit drugs, but really they're one and the same in a lot of ways. If you look at methamphetamine versus amphetamine, you're basically talking about the same compound. Heroin versus most of the morphine and morphine derivatives, they're very, very similar. And so your brain gets these signals that, like, I need to be inflamed, I need to be inflamed. Well, when we eat that inflammatory food, it also sends signals to your insulin that says, I got to freak out. I've got too much sugar in me. I've got too much fat in me. There's nowhere for the sugar to go, which then starts to set up the tenets of cardiovascular disease. So you end up with this gut inflammation that leads to aberrations in insulin that cause the cardiovascular system to shut down. And then you also end up with this inflammation that, even if you're not actively stressed out, is still struggling, it's still signaling, a stress response within your brain. So the whole system breaks down. And when you think about that spectrum of well to unwell, Pharmaceutical drugs work really well when you're in that unwell situation. Really, really well. I mean, I guess I got to put a caveat there. It works really well when you are feeling an acute infection, when you are in very acute pain following a surgery. But when you're really dealing with trauma from your childhood, a pharmaceutical agent is not going to touch it. And unfortunately, even the agents that we have that treat cardiometabolic disease, statins cause diabetes. Diabetes can cause high cholesterol. So you get on medications for both. And then what happens? It causes a major breakdown in the system. So I think about functional medicine, and what functional medicine does is, how do I work upstream? I want to go to the waterfall of inflammation and turn off that waterfall before I end up being poisoned with 10 years of artificial food dyes that leads me to have ADHD. So let's look at, where do we start? What are those daily things that, you know, success and health does not happen overnight. It's a series of decisions that you are willing to make each and every day that ultimately leads to health. So let's make those decisions, cut off the waterfall so that you don't end up having the rapids of disease further down the river.
Absolutely. And there's so much good stuff to unpack there. But I think what you said there, as far as the waterfall with inflammation and gut health, two of the huge things, right? I think it's being drawn to the forefront more now how important gut health is. Our gut, like you said, sends signals to our brain. Think of it as your second brain, right? So you spoke a little on probiotics there, and we can go into the inflammation side of things as well. But let's start with gut health. What are some things that we're putting in our bodies unknowingly or knowingly, right, that cause us to have an unhealthy gut? We talk about leaky gut syndrome or anything along those lines. And how do we combat those? What should we cut out of our diet? And what are things such as probiotics, kombucha, or certain things along those lines that would help our gut health?
I will preface by saying there is no perfect diet for any person. There is no one way that you are supposed to eat. Everyone has to figure that out. But if you can take Michael Pollan's advice and eat real food, mostly plants, and not too much, that's it. We eat way too many calories in the United States, especially, but globally, people are consuming more and more calories. We just eat too many calories. We eat too many calories from inflammatory sources. So allergies and inflammation from foods are real. Allergies can be much more profound. You can have a soy allergy, or shellfish, fish, tree nuts, peanuts, dairy. There's all kinds of big allergens out there. But on a much more low grade level, wheat, especially the modernization of wheat, dairy in all of its forms is inflammatory. Sugar is inflammatory on basically every single level within your body. So if you can't start anywhere else, start by taking a good look at, how much sugar do I eat? Why do I eat it? How was I feeling when I ate it? How did I feel 30 minutes after that? Because when we can put some consciousness around our eating, and when we can consciously say, you know what? I ate that fattening piece of cake because I was living my best life and it gave me joy, and I did it in a conscious way, knowing that this was a special moment where I got to celebrate and be present. That's one thing. If you're like Miranda on Sex and the City and you're pulling the half-eaten cake out of your trash can so that you can binge eat the rest of the cake, honey, you hate yourself. And we just need to come to terms with that, because the sooner that you can come to terms with all of the parts of yourself that you hate, and it's not just you, I hate parts of myself, and I have to put a mirror in my face and say, why do I hate this? Why do I hate this thing that was enacted upon me as a child? Or why do I hate this portion of me that went through trauma, that went through these hard times? I don't have to keep feeding that hatred. I can actually take a step back and say, as much as cheese is delicious, and as much as that steak that's been basted in butter for, for 15 minutes before it just perfectly comes out to my plate, with as delicious as it is, if the food doesn't make you feel good and it doesn't make you love yourself so much while you're eating it, then there's no point in eating it. And the same goes for kale smoothies. If you hate life while you're eating a kale smoothie, why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? And so I think that so many people use food as a way to abuse themselves, and it becomes like this, well, I can never have this again, and I can never have gluten again. If you have celiac disease, you may be going on several years where you're not going to be able to eat gluten, and you may go the rest of your life because you are genetically predisposed to have this problem. And in order for you to not have inflammation and to not have mental health disorders and to not have all these problems in your life, you avoid it. And that is what it is. But for the majority of people who don't have full-on food allergies or autoimmune disorders caused by food triggers, we have a choice to love ourselves enough to put the food on our plate that actually makes us feel good. If you wake up in the morning after drinking 6 beers and are like, I feel like crap, I'm never drinking beer again. And then by 5 p.m., you're like, somebody take me to go get a beer. You're doing yourself harm, and you're doing it intentionally. So let's just call that out. Like, put a mirror in front of your face and say, if I were to turn off my phone, turn off the TV, turn off the news, for goodness sakes, turn off Zoom, if I were to leave my desk and actually go and make a meal for myself, or order a meal for yourself, whatever it is, and actually sit down at a table and consciously eat it with intention and with slowness, you're all of a sudden getting to a point where the ice cream has no power over you anymore. Because if you stop and ask yourself, what is the most delicious thing that I could eat right now? I'm genuinely hungry. I feel genuine hunger pains in my body, which, trust me, don't show up for at least 12 to 18 to 24 hours. You can go a long time without eating food. You just don't believe it. But if you genuinely feel hungry and you take an inventory and go, I'm not eating because I'm sad. I'm not eating because I'm bored. I'm not eating because so-and-so broke up with me. I'm not eating because the election didn't go the way that I wanted. I'm not eating because the election did go the way that I wanted, but then the other people are saying it didn't. All the things. If you just let all of that go and recognize that this food can fuel this magnificent machine that is you, all of a sudden it becomes way easier to say, when I eat gluten, I feel like crap, and so I'm not going to eat gluten. Ooh, when I eat dairy, I'm going to feel like crap because it just is so inflammatory. I'm not going to eat sugar. And those are my 3 big ones. If you can gain some consciousness around gluten, dairy, and sugar, you're light years among your colleagues in this area.
Yeah, those are definitely hard ones. Those are definitely hard ones, but it is, if you consciously think of this, and I think what you're saying wraps around to awareness, right? The 3 things we see in the mirror: what we think of ourselves, what others think of ourselves, and what we
Mm.
really are, right?
Yeah.
And we actually have awareness with not only what we're putting in our body, but why we're doing it, and we're unpacking that, the things that we tell ourselves, our thoughts as well. Why am I telling myself I'm not good enough? Why am I telling myself that I'm scared to go to the gym and lose this weight? Or I'm scared to tell this person, this grudge that I've been holding and let go of this weight. I think that awareness goes around to more than just food when we unpack that, because it really is a domino effect of, I'm doing this because of why. And you spoke on that trauma as well, a childhood trauma. I had a guest on by the name of Joel Hoke who just wrote a book called The Eggshell Effect. And the main basis of it is that there's a specific moment in our lives at a young age, whether we're conscious of it or not, that there was some type of event that happened that affected the way that we think and act on a specific thing, or for the rest of our lives, all the way up until where we are now. Now, the thing of it is whether or not you are going to realize that a lot of the decisions that you make are based off of that trauma now, or are you going to let it, burn your life down until you realize that I need to unpack these things and go to the root of the problem. And I think that plays a role, just like you said, in prescription medications as well. I totally agree that there are definitely specific applications where they are 100% necessary. But you also get into that problem where I have ADD because, I eat too much sugar, I eat red dye, or I drink red dye, or this or that. So now I can't sleep, and now I need Ambien, I need sleeping pills, and now I need this and that. And so it's just this stack of things that keep going when we're not looking at the base of the problem, because we don't want to be quiet and aware of these things.
Oh, what you said right there, that last snippet is we don't want to be quiet. We don't want to be quiet. A lot of people tell me, I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time to like be present in this moment. And it's like, well, then, honey, you flitter in your life away because there only is this moment. There only is this one moment in time. And the greatest thing about this one moment in time is that it is very, very rare to have stress in a current moment. A lot of the times when we have very profound stress, you see a small child about to run into traffic, or you're watching someone actively die in front of you. Those are very stressful and transformative experiences. But what you do with that determines a lot about who you are and who you can become. And when you focus on the current moment, the breath that is just flowing in and out through your nose, the one conversation that I am having here right now, I can't be stressed about, I got a new puppy that someone else in my home, my partner is watching right now. And oh, what if he's doing it wrong? And what if this and what if that? Or you don't have time for it. Your brain does not have time for it. So if your listeners are someone who struggles to get into the current moment, I have been reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which I highly recommend. And Tolle says in the book, if you struggle to come into the present, here's what I would like for you to do. Close your eyes, and I want you to pretend that you are a cat that just saw a mouse run into a mouse hole inside of your own house. And you are a cat just watching and wondering what's going to come out of that mouse hole next. If you struggle to get into the present, ask yourself consciously, I wonder what my next thought is going to be. And just focus on that. I just wonder what my next thought is going to be. And as that thought arises, you got to think of it like a little puppy dog, like it just got off track, but now we come back to the breath that is within us. So focus on I wonder what the next thing that's going to happen, because it's going to bring you into the present moment. Another thing I know, I am so introverted and so just stay in my head. It's hard for me sometimes to get out and really engage with people around me. So one of the things that I do to help me when I know I need to be around other people and I know that I really desire to be present for them is, as someone is talking to me, I will look at them and listen, and I will say something inside my head about their appearance. Because if I'm looking at you and listening to you, Mason, and going like blue shirt, blue shirt, blue shirt, blue shirt in the back of my mind, all of a sudden the grocery list doesn't have space in my head, and the emails that, because we're on Zoom, that I can check if I want to, I don't have time for it, because I'm like, no, 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 blue shirt and I'm listening, blue shirt and I'm listening, versus I'm looking at emails and, oh, let me figure out where that document is so that I find that email. And now all of a sudden I'm like, who am I talking to? What am I doing? Focus on something that's going on inside the other person. And if you can't focus on that, focus on your own 2 feet on the floor. Just, when's the last time you felt your own 2 feet sitting on the floor? If you focus on, I feel the bottom of my foot, I feel the bottom of my foot touching this, oh, I feel this, you no longer have space to be distracted from everything else that is happening in the world around us. And I'll give you one other thought, and I think it's so critically important for this year. I heard this from someone named John Elridge, and he's a pastor. And so, if Christianity is not your thing, he's not going to be the greatest speaker for you. But he did say one thing that I thought was so profound. One of the reasons that we are so stressed out in this modern day and age is we are not built as human beings to take on the stress of the whole world. We're not meant to know what is happening simultaneously in Minneapolis and Hong Kong and in my house and at my kids' school and at my church. And the oh gosh, the Thanksgiving potluck is coming up where we're going to see great Aunt Sally, who's crazy and is always drunk. Our brains and our souls are not meant to do that. And so John Elridge says, always remember, your soul is village sized. So if you can really look around and go, who matters to me? Who really makes my life better? Because if someone in your life is not making your life better, there has never been a better time than right now to delete their number out of your phone and to unfriend them on Facebook. Your soul is village sized. It can only take so much in. So what do you want to focus on? Do you want to focus on being a good partner for your spouse? Do you want to focus on being a good parent for your child? Or do you want to argue with someone on social media about crap that's happening in some foreign land where you don't know anyone? Your soul can only take so much. Focus on that. And again, you're so far ahead of everyone else. I heard a beautiful meditation by the Sod Guru, and he said, listen, if you want to be happy in this world, you recognize your own mortality. If you recognize your own mortality, every morning when you wake up, you go, I'm alive again. Oh my gosh, life is great. And then you look at your village sized soul and go, holy crap. My mom is still alive. My kids are still alive. My pets are still alive. My best friend is still alive. With as many people as we have that die in this world every single day, the average is one person dies for every 10 people on the planet every single day. So if you wake up alive with your whole village sized soul intact, you're doing better than 1 in 10 people on this entire planet. So let's stop complaining. Let's stop bickering about stuff that doesn't matter. And let's come back to the breath and recognize that we can't control stuff that happens out here, but you can control what's going on inside of your own heart and mind. You really genuinely can. I promise you.
Yes, absolutely. There's a Latin term that's nunc cepi, and it means now I begin. And
Oh, yes.
I try and tell myself every morning, now I begin. Like tomorrow's gone, I'm here now. And it is in today's world, and even more so now with the rise of technology and how fast it has grown, it is important that we realize what you said. We are not made to take in constant stimulation, constant stimulation, and have this crack phone or whatever we want to call it, this drug, right? This dopamine release in our pockets at 24/7, begging for our attention. And speaking back to ADD, I think it's a big reason why there is ADD and anxiety and depression, because we are always, like you said, outside of our village. Our head is in 17 different places. No one is going to be in 17 different places. We have to be present. So what are some ways, and practical ways, I guess? And I know I'm going off, but I just thought about this. There's another thing you said there that I remember I want to talk about. You said when trying to be present with someone, think about your feet on the ground. There's a meditation that I like to listen to. It was actually the first one that I got into by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I love a lot of his work. He's a neuroscience doctor who has a lot of great stuff. For those listening that haven't really dove that deep into neuroscience and how powerful your brain is, and how you can literally rewire your future in the way that you think, and the law of attraction basis, but more on like, yes, this is a real thing that people do, and healing yourself through your brain, physical ailments and, lifelong ailments that people have had through this power of using, your brain that we all have access to. But that thing of being present is so hard sometimes. It's so hard. And the meditation goes, mainly throughout the whole meditation, it's 15 minutes, it's nice and easy, and I'll link it in the show notes for y'all if you want to check it out. But he basically is saying, like you said, feet, like focus on the area around your feet. Focus on the nose, the space between your nose in space. Focus on like the space between your eyes in space. Like focus on all of these small things, like just being alive, being present. What are some practical ways that you have been able to use, or that you've seen help other people on being present, whether that's balancing, using your phone, or like you said, these certain techniques and tactics in a world that's so technological and so shifting towards this way of living?
Absolutely. One of the things that I think we do wrong is we always ask ourselves, what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that could happen if I do this? Just stop and ask yourself, what's the best thing that can happen to me if I make a change? What is the best thing that can happen to you if today you stop listening to this podcast right now and come back later and listen to it and take 30 seconds to breathe and observe your breath? What is the best thing that can happen to you if you do that for the next week? And all of a sudden, you start envisioning your life as you want it to be. And instead of focusing on, well, this news channel said this and that news channel said that, and I don't believe anything, and but so and so believes it. All of a sudden, you just start casting a vision for what you want the world to be. I mean, it is a cliche, but dang it, it's so true. Be the change that you want to be in the world. And there is a lot of contention right now in the world, and you have a choice. Do you drive that contention forward, or do you stop and say, this is not worth my fight or flight response? It's not. Is it really worth, I hear people all the time, I've got ADHD. How's your stress level? Off the charts. Wonder why you got ADHD. I have depression. How's your stress level? Oh my God, I hate my job. I hate my husband. I hate my kid. How's that working for you? And so Eckhart Tolle, again, throwing back to him, we often think that we don't have time to be present because we're too stressed or too busy. Well, stress is nothing more than wanting the current moment to be something that it is not. I'll say that again. Stress is nothing more than wanting the current moment to be something it is not. So stop fighting. Stop fighting it. And as far as some really practical tips go, here's what I recommend. Bookend your day. Start your morning with some good practices that help you to be well, and end your day with some practices that help you to be well. Whether that is using an app like Insight Timer or like Calm to do some meditations, great. If that is sitting and observing 3 of your breaths going in and out of your nose, great. If that is picking up a yoga class where your ego is not in the yoga class, but you're actually there to breathe through the movements, amazing. If that is cooking a meal that is going to nourish you on the deepest levels of your soul, great. What our job is to really bring in these practical things is to understand that health and wellness doesn't happen overnight. And we have to think of ourselves as the accumulation of all of the different choices that we have made over the course of 15 to 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 to 60 to 80 years. So if you're still mad about stuff that happened in your childhood, go to a therapist. If you are utilizing drugs or alcohol to damp down your feelings, grab a pillow and punch it and go to a therapist. I'm a huge fan of therapy over here, but you have to get down to the root cause, because whether you believe in sort of the more Eastern understanding of why we're here on earth, which is the Dharma, this is the path that I'm given to walk, and I got to walk this path. A lot of people think that Dharma is like, oh, I have to be what I was told to be. No. Dharma is about you discovering why you're here on earth. Why did God put you here? Why did the universe put you here? If you believe in reincarnation, why did you choose to be here in this life? If you want to say it like Jesus said it and say, like, I've laid a path before you and it's your job to walk it, it's the same concept, different religions. We talk about karma, about how what we give gets given back to us. But there is also this dutiful path that we have to become the best version of ourselves. And what would happen if today starts today? If I begin today, what if you just say, today is the next day of the rest of my life? And you actually say, all right, I'm terrible at meditating, but I'm going to do it for 30 minutes. I hate plant-based eating, but I'm going to do it this one meal. I hate, being kind to people who are mean to me, but instead of snapping at them, I'm going to breathe in and breathe out, and then just say, okay, so sorry. It sounds like I misunderstood what needs to happen here. Is the world worth your fight or flight response? Is it worth ramping up your anxiety and your inflammation and all of that? Or can you just take a step back and go, wow, this is a big, crazy world I'm living in. And how do I maintain an even flow while not being passive, not being a pushover? I think that when you maintain that constant internal flow, It makes it easier for you to say, you've been talking bad to me in my own house? I don't think so. It makes it easier for you to understand that your children are going to push on your own ego. When you're mad at your kids, if especially if they're little, they're not really doing wrong. They're just pushing on your own ego of what life is supposed to be. Why won't the kid pick up his toys? Well, he's 4 years old and he had 6 hours of really enjoying those toys. Are you going to fight with them now about putting them away instead of just saying, like, you ready to brush your teeth and go to bed? Let's read a bedtime story. You have a choice in the individual moments that either drive you towards calm or drive you towards stress. What is the best thing that could happen to you if you just continually said, I'm just going to steer this ship towards calm? Where does that calm land me? And just keep going that way. Keep going that way.
So good. So good. So I'm interested as to, was this way of living something that, was bred in you at a younger age that you really grew up with? Or was there a turning point in your life? Did you have one of those, like, I need to change. I need to change this, and kind of found that calling that we talked, that dharma? Or was this something that you kind of came onto later in
I think it's both. It is a matter of me recognizing and seeing the childhood traumas that I went through and being able to see those head on. I'm super grateful for my parents because they allowed me to speak about them. And, if you don't have parents who can go there with you, find friends, find, therapists who can. Um, Something was innate inside of me. I think that I instinctually understood from a very, very young age that I was going to die and that death is a normal part of life. And whenever death comes my way, I'll be okay. There was something innate. There was something gentle and easy inside of me about that, which I know is not the case for a lot of people. I know a ton of people are very scared of death and death of their loved ones. And it's not to say that I'm better. It's just that we're on different paths. I'm working out one thing and other people are working out other things. But of course, there have been those moments where I look and go, do I really want to have bulimia? Do I really want to, like, kill myself with food? Do I really want to use drugs and alcohol every single day? Do I really want to believe that being on 15 to 20 medications is normal? Do I really want to foster that in the world? And I eventually had many a conversation with myself and said, I may not be perfect. I'll never be perfect. I'll never have this attainment of I think if we as humans in this broken world can see a glimpse of nirvana or heaven or whatever you want to call it during our lives, and we're hugely and immensely blessed. But my personal question is always, why am I here? What what did God put me here to do? What did universe put me here to do? What did spirit put me here to do? And what is the best thing that can happen if I do that? So, for me, I started out as a little kid. My parents got divorced. It was extraordinarily painful for me. I was, oh my God, a rebellious teenager. I
life?
was always driven. I was like, I am going to get a doctorate. And here it is. I've got my doctorate. Here's my bachelor's. I got my 2 postdocs. I achieved everything I was supposed to achieve and then went, well, great. Now I have a really expensive wall of art and I'm still not there. I'm not there. I'm not satisfied. What helps me to become satisfied is to recognize that the self hatred does not have to belong to me. If I look at the places in myself where I hate myself, which all of us have them, just say it out loud. I hate myself because of these reasons. You know, I got too much fat on my kneecaps, for goodness sakes. That is a reason to hate myself. But you look at all that, and then if you keep working at it and you keep digging and you forgive the people that deserve forgiveness, and you forgive yourself for not being able to forgive the people that are just going to continue to abuse you, and you come to the place and you just say, I'm broken, and I know the only thing that can fill this brokenness is love and kindness and goodness from the inside out. It can only come from the God that lives within you. It can only come from the piece of you that is that pure, unadulterated love that can never be replaced. And recognize that the more you make space for that love, the more freely it gives itself. And so, was there like a magical light switch moment? There were a lot of them along the way. And every time something goes bad in my life and that light switch gets flipped, I go, what is this here to teach me? You know, tore my ACL. You know, listeners, you may be sitting there going, my husband left me in the middle of a pandemic. Now I got to homeschool these kids and all that. What is this here to teach you? Because you have a choice. You have a very defined choice to become better or to stay the same or regress. And what's the best thing that can happen to you if you just decide, I am going to live with joy and I am going to access all this anger, this frustration, all the like meanness that you want to give out in the world. If you can transmute it, trust me, the earth will burn it up for you, and the universe, the clouds, God will take your worries from you. So you got to decide, who do you want to be? And that's all up to you. Nobody else can give or take that away from you. Who do you want to be? And what's the best thing that can happen to you if you actually are who you are in the depths of your heart?
Yes. Yes, yes. Preach. She's preaching.
Oh, I didn't mean to be preachy. I know we've said God and Jesus a few times tonight, but you know, I think that religions are all there to try to help us encapsulate and explain what our human experience is. And so let's just give more love and more kindness and more goodness out in the world, and the world's going to be a better place.
I'm so, so there with you. Two things that really stood out to me are the intention, right? The intention of, I have all of these things that are happening to me that I can't control. But what I can control is my intention. And what I can control too is the way that I look at these things that are happening to me and use them as a positive or let them drag me down. Okay, I have fear of doing this thing. Am I going to let fear stop me from doing this thing that deep down I really want to do? Am I going to let fear of being judged or fear of failing, or am I going to fail and say, you know what, that's it, I'm hanging them up. I can't do this anymore. I think looking at our perspective and then adding intention to that perspective has been something that's helped me tremendously. And along with that awareness of, okay, I'm setting my intentions. We talked about, morning. What are you doing in the morning? Are you going to set your intentions to have a good day? You'll be surprised that if you do these things, watch your day pan out, and then be aware of the people around you and be aware of yourself, and see the difference in energy when you set those intentions. It's crazy when you start doing these things consistently and seeing all of the benefits that you reap from it, and then being able to be a light to other people at the same time, because you aren't so caught up in your head, you aren't so caught up in everything external. When you do look inward, you're able to give outward, which is, it seems flip-flop sometimes when we think about that, but it is good in that sense to be selfish with your time and selfish with that self-keeping of what you're allowing yourself to believe inside.
Absolutely. If you take a moment to intentionally craft joy throughout your day, you're going to look around and go, everybody else seems miserable.
It's good.
Every It is so crazy. Everyone else seems miserable. And all of a sudden, people will start telling you, I feel better when I'm around you. What are you doing? And you just say, you know what? I spend 5 minutes every morning just sitting down in stillness and in quiet and breathing. That's it. That's all I'm doing. It seems so attainable when someone else says it. But there is something that has to spark inside of you that says, I love myself enough to not just do this for one day and give it up. I actually love myself enough to do this for the next 3 years and see where it gets me. One of my yoga teachers, I was complaining to him because I was like, my hamstrings are just so tight. And it feels like the more I stretch them, the more they recoil. And he goes, oh, that's fine. Just keep working on it for the next 5 years and let me know how it goes. And it's so true. And for any of you who are struggling with disease or mental health disorders or syndromes or whatever someone has told you defines you, and some people listening, that may be what you've taken on to define yourself. I just ask you to take a step back and go, what is the best thing that can happen to me if I made this one small change and then I mounted it and compounded it on top of that small change? And if I stopped taking on the stress of the world and all of the other things, you do have the choice to be joyful and powerful and within your own space where no one can shake that, where you become unshakable. Even a year like 2020, where it's just like, what the heck is happening? You become unshakable because you know that you've got this inner compass of stillness that overcomes all the obstacles.
Absolutely. It's so true. Guys, if you had taken a break and come back to join us, Dr. Lindsey Elmore is here. We have been having an incredible conversation so far. Tell us a little bit about the Clean Slate Cleanse. This is one of the cookbooks that you have, and I've been very interested. It was a 21-day cleanse, correct?
It's 21 with an optional 7-day add on. That was something that people asked for. And one of the things that I think is critically important for anyone who is looking to make a transformation in their life, no matter what disease is facing you, you can always be healthier now. You know, people say, well, I've been diagnosed with cancer. I might as well just give it up. No, like you can still make amazing choices. So the Clean Slate Cleanse is a cleanse that I started experimenting with more than a decade ago. It is wheat-free, sugar-free, alcohol-free, mostly caffeine-free, and vegan. And we have some additional add-ons to also make it free from the big 8 allergens. So you would also cut out tree nuts, peanuts, and soy. And then we also have modules in intermittent fasting, as well as using Ayurvedic eating principles to help you go through a cleanse. And so I think that, listen, if you don't know where to start with your health, start with an elimination diet and start by cleaning up the diet. Don't go to the grocery store and buy a container of guacamole. I want you to actually buy an avocado. That's what I want you to do. So we're going to eat real food, not too much, mostly plants from now on. And the Clean Slate Cleanse is a way to reset your relationship with food. And it also brings in mindful eating and knowing that what I'm putting into my body is serving me and it is helping me to become better, as opposed to, why did I just eat that cheeseburger and cheese fries and all of that? Because you know, I'm all about whatever diet works for you works, But this whole thing of like, we can eat as much meat and as much cheese and as much fat as we want to and still consider ourselves healthy. I love y'all, but it's false. And we really need to be focused on vegetables. So if you want to eat keto and really get your body into burning fats for fuel, great. Don't just go the like full on steak basted in a pound of butter. You're gonna need some sauteed kale, and you're gonna need some vegetables. And so diversifying colors. So we go through a lot in the Clean Slate Cleanse, and really and truly, the main goal of the cleanse is to help someone who has never considered eating mostly plants to be like, okay, I'm just going to eat mostly plants, and I'm going to eat all plants, and I'm going to avoid dairy, and I'm going to avoid gluten because it's allergenic and it's what's causing you to have bad breath in the morning. And guys, it's what's making your package not work. It's ladies, it's what's making you not want to get that mojo in the bedroom. We need phytonutrients and macronutrients that really help to support our overall body. And we are, in a lot of ways, meant to be plant-based. Doesn't mean you can't eat meat for the rest of your life. I mean, come on, meat is undeniably delicious, but we need to be eating mostly plants. And so the Clean Slate Cleanse really helps people to take that first step in eliminating the allergenic foods, the cheap factory farmed foods, and coming back to, what does my relationship with food look like? Do I even know if I'm hungry? When is the last time that I felt hungry? What does hunger feel like? That's what we do on the Clean Slate Cleanse. And our next session is coming up in October of 2021 is our next live cleanse. And we also have the cookbooks and the workbooks available all of the time to work yourself through it.
I love that. The biggest thing that I always see with diets is it's like people think it's a one size fits all. Like you said, for keto or even, vegan or certain things, there is some undeniable truths. Whole foods, plant foods, macronutrients, all of these things are great for you and are supposed to be a part of our diet. There's also the undeniables of, now we're seeing dairy, not very good for you. Sugar, obviously not good for you. Wheat, gluten, a lot of these things cause inflammation versus even maybe like a sourdough bread that's a little more fermented. It's not as hard on your gut. So things like this. What is your take on meat in general? And as far as, is it a problem with the way that this meat is being given to us? Or is it a problem with meat in general? Is it a problem with the way that it's obviously very morally wrong in some ways, but also just unhealthy with those steroids and everything that's pumped into food? Is that the main problem, or is it more that we shouldn't be eating as much meat?
Well, oh gosh, oh my goodness, there's so many different levels to that. Number one, morals and ethics, that's on you. I can't determine what your morals and ethics are. So if you say, I see no moral dilemma, no ethical dilemma with humans being the very top of the food chain, cool. I'm down with you. But if you are someone who says, there's no reason that an animal needs to die so I can live, because it is very much a fact that humans can survive and thrive on a totally plant-based diet for many years. Of course, there are problems with factory farming and the industrialization of meat and the additives and the antibiotics. And most of meat has gotten rid of the growth hormones and the steroids, but the antibiotics is a main problem, is a huge problem. So going back to pharmaceuticals, we think about, well, we don't have any antibiotics that can treat these infections. Well, the number one consumer of antibiotics in the United States is meat and the meat industry. We also need to look at the environmental problems that come from meat, not only because, like we saw last year in North Carolina, where there was a hurricane that breached all of these pig feces containment facilities, and now they're just flowing into the river, bringing with it all that bacteria, all that stuff that we're now relying on algae and fish to deal with for us. So there's that problem of like, when we industrialize, we don't have good systems to deal with the waste that comes of it. The other thing is, when you cram animals too tight in together, they become inherently more likely to spread illnesses. They become inherently more likely to be given industrial feed, which industrial feed is nothing more than genetically modified corn and soy. And all of these things, all of this genetically modified wheat and corn and soy, it's meant to make us fat. It's meant to be a sugar consumption program. And if you don't take ownership of that and say like, well, okay, it's one thing if twice a year or once a year or every other year you buy a half a cow or a half a pig and put it in your deep freeze. That's one thing. But if you're just constantly going out thinking that you need meat at every meal, you are eating food that is industrially produced, where we've moved past a point where it no longer is you are what you eat, it's you are what you eats. And so if what you eat is eating crap, then guess what? Their muscles are made of crap. Their bodies are made of crap. Plus, we talked about mental health, and the mental health of animals is also very, very important. I hear a lot of people say, well, when the animal is not stressed when you slaughter it, that improves the taste of the meat. I don't know if that's true, but if that's what you have to believe, amazing. That means that you're not going to be buying industrial factory farmed meats. On the health side of the equation, I've already mentioned the environment, which is critically important. The other thing is, when you imbibe meat, you are also ingesting high amounts of bacteria that skew your gut bacteria. So when you eat meat, if you look at a cat, their GI tract is very, very short because they eat this meat and they don't have time for it to rot inside of them because they are eating 100% meat. Humans have this long, meandering GI tract. So if you eat a bunch of meat, it's going to sit there and start fermenting and producing gas and producing bacteria. These bacteria skew towards the production of a nasty, nasty inflammatory compound called TMAO, trimethylamine oxide. And trimethylamine oxide not only causes atherosclerosis, but it accelerates atherosclerosis that is already existing. So listen, I'm not here to tell everyone that you got to go 100% plant-based. All I'm saying is you can do yourself a favor if you, as Arnold Schwarzenegger said in the new documentary Game Changers, cool it. Just cool it with the meat. You do not need meat at every meal. And believe it or not, you do not need 3 square meals a day. You can go 12 hours a day without eating, I promise you. If you can invite with joy and with love a greater diversity of plant-based ingredients into your daily routine, you're not going to need as much meat.
Yeah, I think that there is no argument in the fact that the way that things are processed and the meat industry and the industrialization in that, you stay away from it. I think that for me personally, I do eat meat, but when I do eat meat, I make sure for the most part that, hey, this is, grass fed. This is something that I shot or that I killed myself. Personally, I think, if you do hunt, use the meat. It's a transfer of energy. I believe in that. At the same time, it's like, you gotta, like pork, no. Obviously, I think there's certain meats you shouldn't eat. I think certain meats are better, as far as even fish and wild caught fish. You got to look at that as well with mercury. If it's something that's farmed, it's fish that is farmed that contains high amounts of mercury, that is not good for you. So I think it's about, like you said, not thinking that you have to have meat with every meal, but also being aware of where this meat is coming from. And
Absolutely.
is like sustainable and good and whole in the way and where it's coming from. I have a question as far as, I think that we're seeing health and a healthy lifestyle trending upwards. It's becoming more of a cool thing, which is awesome because a lot of people are becoming more health conscious. At the same time, it opens the door for a lot of companies and people to come into this space and say, hey, this is the new thing. It's awesome. Come try it. It's good for you.
Right.
I think that sometimes it's not. You know, supplements, are they third party tested? This, and that. You got to go down the list of things. Same thing when it comes to, I think some, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but from what I've seen, a lot of these even plant-based like burgers or patties or things along these nature, do we need to look into these things? Because I feel like some of them with the vegetable oils and a lot of the stuff that maybe in some of these plant-based products may not be as good as we think, right? It may be a good alternative, but we also have to do the due diligence.
Absolutely. I mean, studies have come out that have compared eating like regular hamburgers to perhaps a Beyond Burger. And you're going to have less cholesterol consumption. You're going to have less caloric consumption. You're going to have less saturated fat and less fat consumption. But you also have to look at what is inside of that. And, you know, I'll just say it, and nobody's paying me to say this, but I'm a bigger fan of Beyond Burger than I am Impossible Burger, because Impossible Burger was genetically engineered to become the burger that it is, versus the Beyond Burger. The CEO of the company just said he went on a mission to figure out, what is meat? Is it this animal product that is made this way, or is it a series of terpenes, of smells that we are exposed to as the meat cooked? Is it the way that you bite into it? And how do I duplicate that with plants? But ultimately, it's undeniable that if you look at, would my grandmother call that food? Would my great grandmother call that food? If your great grandmother, or even go back and like think even before that, think of your ancestry that was here in 1700. Seems a long time ago for us, but really and truly 1700 was just like a blink of an eye. Would someone who was in your family understand that this is food dating back to the 1700s, the 1500s, the you know, if we can do that, then all of a sudden we're in better shape. We start recognizing that, okay, I'm going to eat real meat from an animal that I at least have some concept of where and how it was raised and slaughtered. I'm a, you know, my dad is a huge hunter. So I'm glad to hear you say that if you hunt, use that meat. And I would take it a step further. Don't just use the meat, use the bones, use the marrow, use the pelts, use the everything that you can, because that animal's life was here for a reason as well. And the more that we can take a step back and stop dissociating ourselves from meat and say, well, you know, I don't eat much meat, but when I do, it's an elk that I killed, or it's a whitetail that I killed. Okay, it begins to be close to you. It begins to have some concept and some understanding of it. I also want to echo what you said about fish. Fish are some of the most contaminated things that we eat. And a lot of the things that we think are healthy, that's cute. You know, we think about tuna. Tuna is a healthy food, right? Recent studies have shown that we should be eating one serving or less per month of tuna because of the mercury contamination. And the reason for that is because tuna and swordfish and king mackerel and all of these big game fish, they eat at the same level of the food chain as we do. So both of us, both a shark and a human, will eat a flounder and call it dinner. You know, both an alligator and a human will eat a catfish and call it dinner. So when you're eating at that level of the food chain, all of that runoff I talked about from those pig factory farms that flow into the river that get eaten by the algae, well, guess what? That gets eaten by small fish that get eaten by medium-sized fish, that the medium-sized fish is like, I'm going to go to the ocean. And then all of a sudden gets eaten by a large fish that then gets eaten by a shark. Well, all of that accumulates up the food chain. Then you eat the shark. And then guess what, ladies? Then you go and breastfeed your child, and it even further accumulates in them. So if you can eat at the bottom rungs of the food chain where plants exist primarily, and then recognize that I have an obligation, you know, in the Bible, it says that humans were given dominion over animals. And I hear a lot of people say, well, we were given dominion over animals, that means I can eat as many as I want. Screw that. You think that that was what God or what universe or what spirit or what the benevolent source is would have us to do? Forget it. No, dominion means I take care. I take care of those who need from me. I take care of people and animals that are not able to care for themselves in the way that I care for myself. And that is critically important. We are not meant to be bullheaded and in charge. We are meant to be benevolent beings here to flow with the universe.
There's so much to say there, but the eating at the bottom of the food chain, I think, is profound. When you think about that,
Thank you.
and we talk about the transfer of energy, when you think about it at that base level, it really does make you think. And these are questions that we all have and that we all ask. And when it's broken down to us in a way, in a fashion such as you can do with the knowledge that you have, it's the picture starts brightening and it starts getting a little bit clearer. And I think that's a way to look at a lot of things. We mentioned politics, this election and everything that's been going on. It goes beyond that, to open our awareness to other things, to other people, to other experiences. And just like I don't think one diet will work for everybody, one person doesn't have the same experiences as everybody. So
Yes.
it is something to, like you said, I like as far as what you said is taking, elimination. All right, I'm going to eliminate these things. And how do I feel after? And maybe I add this in, does this make me feel and then not eating from a emotional place, but eating from a place of I'm eating for fuel. And that's how I like to look at it sometimes. This is fuel. This is not necessarily me indulging. This food is fuel for me, and I need to treat it as such. Because oftentimes we eat because it tastes so good. But that's the relationship of food that gets unhealthy, I believe.
Well, and I think taste is a byproduct of a lot of sensory perceptions that are happening, but also a lot of emotions. And so take your emotions out of eating and eat because it's the way that you survive as a human. How can you eat in a way that makes the world a better place? Let's talk about that, and let's do more of that. And then we really get somewhere.
Absolutely. Where can everybody find you?
Oh my goodness. There's so many places. You can head to lindseyelmore.com. That is going to get you to all of my blog, as well as we have a ton of free downloadables over at lindseyelmore.com lindsey.com/free-tools. You can download a gratitude journal. There is a way that you can make empowered decisions about your health. You can head to cleanslate.cleanse.com. My health and wellness business coaching platform is Brand Strategies Lab. Please come and listen and subscribe to the Lindsey Elmore Show. And you can find me either at Lindsey Elmore on Instagram and Facebook, or at Dr. Lindsey Elmore on Pinterest.
And I will link all of this stuff for y'all. I know that if you've made it this far, you've gotten so much out of this episode. Dr. Lindsey's podcast, The Lindsey Elmore Show, as she said, just reached over 100,000 podcast downloads, y'all. And that is a huge accomplishment. And it is because she knows what she's talking about. So if you enjoyed this episode and you want more of Dr. Lindsey, go head over to her show. Check out some of her content. Like she said, there's a lot of free downloadable content for you all there. And it's been an honor to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And I'm so grateful that, your listeners don't know this, but we had a few like snafus trying to get together, but everything happens at the exact right time. So thank you so much for having me and for hosting such an amazing podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. It was funny. I tried to catch Lindsey yesterday actually, and we just had an awful connection. And the things happen, and look at this show. It turned out incredible. And this is a relationship that I hope to continue and garnish down the road. I definitely want to have you on again. There's things that we didn't even get to talk about that I want to keep talking about.
I know.
Further down the road, we'll have some more stories, and we'll be able to, give our listeners some more great content to go and use in their daily walks. And that's something that I always encourage y'all to do. If something that you listened to today helped you, or you thought, oh, that's awesome. Ooh, I want to use this. Ooh, I want to try this. Don't sit on it. Go write it down and then go act on it. That is what this podcast is about. You heard Lindsey say, breathe. This is the Breathe in Air podcast, where everyday action meets extraordinary mindset, guys. Action. So if you found something helpful, go use it, utilize it, and see the results that it gives you. And also share this episode with somebody else. If you think that it can help them, I don't ask for much, but if this episode helped you and you think it can help someone else, go ahead and send it down the line. Thank y'all so much for listening to another episode. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go leave us a rating and a comment if you enjoyed this episode. We always love to hear your feedback. If you are listening for the first time and want to know where to find me, you can find me on the Breathe in Air podcast on Instagram. You can find us on our Facebook page as well, or our YouTube page, Breathe in Air podcast. So thank y'all so much for your time. And Dr. Lindsey, thank you so much for your time. It was an honor, absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me. I'd come back anytime.
Awesome. Thank you so much. See you guys.